to this evening's program. So you want to buy a place in Italy, now what? Before I introduce our guest speakers, a few notes about our society. The Dante Alighieri Society of British Columbia, your door to all things Italian, is a not-for-profit organization with a mission to promote Italian language and culture. We do this through our language classes. The Dante Alighieri Italian Language School offers lessons from beginner through to the advanced levels. Currently, we are in the middle, well, not quite the middle, I guess the first third of our winter session. And just like to inform all the members of the society that if you join our Italian language classes, you're entitled to a 5% discount in our tuition. For the month of February, we're offering 2 new programs. One commenced last night. It is a conversation 1 and 2 class. And this class is for people who have some language skills and would like to improve their conversational abilities. It is an 8-week class. And as I mentioned, that commenced last evening, but never too late to join. The second program that we're offering is Italian for Travelers. And I know that after watching our program and listening to our guests this evening, we'll be more anxious than ever to be able to want to return to Italia. And this program is starting February 15th. It is a 6-week program, and it'll be a fun and an engaging way for people who are not that fluent or have maybe any Italian language skills to be able to learn a little bit about the language in order to prepare for your journey. On becoming a member of our society, we just value your membership, and also we encourage and really appreciate your support through your donations for our programs. If you do choose to become a member of the society, it does provide you with lots of opportunities for benefits, as well as it truly does support us in keeping on providing these programs and cultural events. So please make that a consideration. We have so much to offer for the coming year. So you want to buy a place in Italy, now what? Before I get on to introducing formally our guest speakers this evening, as you all know through the Zoom, we do have the opportunity to use the chat button to make this a very interactive program. Please and do put in your comments and your questions, and partly through the program, Silvana and Graham will engage with us and be able to provide more information around your desires to know more. So it is now a pleasure for me and the Dante Alighieri Society to introduce our guest speakers. Silvana Saccomani is a former broadcast journalist and accredited business communicator. She is proud of her Italian heritage, and her family roots are in the Friuli, Venezia, Giulia region of Italy. Silvana and her husband, Graham, do now live in Victoria when they're not living in their lovely place. I can't wait to see it over in Montepulciano, Tuscany. Graham Wetter is a native Calgarian and has a background in business and law. Graham spent 35 years working in the financial services sector in Alberta, the last 10 years as CEO of the credit union Central Alberta. Outside of work, Graham's interests are in all things outside. Sounds like mountaineering and traveling the world has been part of your past, and I'm sure part of your future. So without any further ado, I'm really very pleased to introduce both Silvana and Graham.
Thank you, grazie Laura, benvenuti a tutti. We're really excited about this presentation, not because we're experts in the field of finding, buying, purchasing, and renovating in Italy, but because we've done it and because we're still married throughout the whole process. So we're a couple of steps ahead of you, and we are hoping to share what we've learned so that you can take away some tips and some learnings should you too want to go and buy in Italy or elsewhere. So the presentation, as Laura mentioned, it's going to be divided into 2 parts. The first part is the house hunting experience, and then we're going to stop and take questions on that. And then the second part will be looking at the actual purchase and renovation process. So here we go. This is the first time we're working together, so I hope it works out.
First love. Okay, so the lead-in slide and this one are the views from our apartment in Montepulciano. We look over the Val d'Orcia, which is actually a protected reserve agricultural area in Tuscany. What we purchased was the second level or the top level of a two-story row building. And the building is 300 years old, built of stone. And so it's typical of what you would see in an Italian Tuscan Renaissance hill town. When we started our search, we started with a budget, and our budget was 200,000 euro or less, hopefully less. And you can see lots that are less.
You can see €1 places,
Yeah,
actually.
we'll get to
talk
that
about the
in a bit,
€1 property.
So that was our budget prior to renovations. So that's kind of how we started our process.
Okay, so here's Italy, the 20 regions in Italy, north, south, east, and west. The regions are different. You'll find differences in terms of climate, topography, food is very regional, different events, different cultures. So there's different feelings in each of the regions. Where we ended up buying is in Tuscany. So we all know where it is, but just to remind us, it's right here. And we bought in Montepulciano. So the provincia is the Provincia di Siena, and we're about here, right? So here is Tuscany to the left. My relatives are from the Friuli Venezia Giulia region, which is way up north here. Udine, Pordenone is where they're from. Again, we bought in Tuscany.
So we love the relatives, but we are a safe distance from them. That was part of the strategy.
We do love the relatives. Okay. So why Italy? So for me, the last name is Saccomani. It's obviously Italian. They were my parents on their wedding day. We grew up in Canada. We were all born in Canada. My parents came over as immigrants. There's 5 children. The environment in which we grew up at home was very Italian. So, you know, the homemade wine, the polenta, the making of the sausage in the basement, the bacala in the garage. On Friday nights, we'd go to Italian language school. That was very important. Growing up, we went a few times as a family, 5 kids over to Italy. As teenagers, we also went on our own. So this idea of when we started talking about having a second place somewhere, to me, it was natural. The idea that, you know, tracing, going back to our roots, carrying on the heritage, continuing with the development of the language, and being involved in this rich cultural heritage that we've been so lucky, I've been so lucky to inherit. And for Graham, why Graham? Why Italy for Graham?
So Graham Wetter is Scottish and German, so there's nothing Italian about that whatsoever. But I love travel and have traveled in many parts of the world. But I found I always gravitated back to Italy. And prior to us buying our place in Italy, I'd probably been there 6 or 7 times, some of those prior to meeting Silvana. And every time I went to Italy as well, I traveled always north of Rome. Hadn't seen other parts of Italy, but I always had a real attraction to Tuscany. So every trip I went to Italy, I ended up returning to Tuscany for part of my travels. And what really, I think, caught my heart in Tuscany was the incredible history, the architecture, beautiful hilly landscape in Tuscany, you know, the vineyards, the olive groves. It's just kind of iconic Italy. And, you know, since we bought there, actually, we've realized that even Italians in their own country view Tuscany as a real treasure and are quite, you know, impressed when you tell them that you're living in Tuscany. Our last trip together before we bought the place, we were at the San Antimo Abbey near Montepulciano. And I distinctly remember sort of looking up from the Abbey at the little hill town that overlooks it and thinking, boy, it would be cool to live in a town like that. And so we got back to Calgary and sort of started talking about that kind of a dream. I think coincidentally around that same time, new person joined my office, and they had bought a place in Italy about 6 months prior to that. So it, I think, ignited in me a view that this was indeed possible, and maybe something we should pursue. And Silvana was enthusiastic. She had all the right credentials, the Italian heritage, the citizenship, and some good language skills. So that certainly helped. And we were looking for a holiday home. We wanted a holiday place. We wanted a base in Europe and Italy where we could explore further. And we'd thought about it, I think, as many Canadians do, about the warm place in Phoenix or Florida. And for us, that just wasn't the type of cultural experience we were looking for. It was too much like home, and we wanted something much more different.
More challenging, and we got that. So we got that.
Yeah, we got some challenges.
So now you've heard about us and our reason. Do any of these images resonate with you? And the idea here is you need to think about, what is that dream? What is that lifestyle that you're looking to achieve by buying in Italy or elsewhere? Because that will help you then determine what area of Italy are you going to be in, right? And so, to the point of, if you want to be a wine connoisseur, or if you are a wine connoisseur, if you want a vineyard, there's certain areas that are more conducive to that. Today, I researched just to say, are there any regions in Italy that doesn't produce wine? And in fact, all regions in Italy produce wine. So I thought that was quite interesting. Okay, so going back to this idea of being clear and clarity around what is it you want as a lifestyle in Italy. If you're looking to be in the mountains, there's lots of choices. This is the Dolomites in the Trentino Alto Adige area. That's a very different experience than, let's say, the mountains on the west side in the French Alps or the Italian Alps that have a very French feel. Around in here, this is around Bolzano, they speak Italian with a German accent. Their food is very German in that they have,
schnitzel, fondue.
All sorts of
things.
If you're looking and hoping to run into George Clooney, then you don't want to be in the mountains. You want to be around Lago di Como, Lago Maggiore, and Lago di Garda. It's beautiful. It's close to Milan. It's also very expensive. If you're a sun worshiper, then you want to be, and there are a lot of Italians that have apartments where they go for the Ferre d'Agosto in Almare. And this is a picture of Lignano Sabbiadoro, and my cousin, just to give him a little plug, he's a realtor. He has like Saccomani Immobiliare when you go up there. So lots to choose from. Okay.
So then there's also the option of the large city. And, there's some just marvelous major cities in Italy. They all have great culture and history and architecture. A benefit of locating in a large city is you're close to major transport. They're easy to get to. They're easy to get around once you're in the city. You could probably live without a car. You're going to see a much greater range of services, cultural events, options for restaurants, and so on. So it's a happening place in Italy in their cities. In major cities in Italy, the historic centers, unlike some more outlying or rural areas, tend to be much more vibrant. So they're lively centers in Italian cities. But there can be downsides to that too. If you look at Florence, it is dominated by tourists in the historical center of Florence. Most of the businesses are really focused on tourists, so that the local Italians really try to stay away from the center of Florence. And you can understand why, if you look at that environment from the perspective of a resident. And there's the typical big city issues I think you find in any city in the world. They're certainly more expensive to buy in. They're more costly to live in. You may find you're more anonymous there, so harder to integrate into the local Italian community. European cities are very high density, so you're going to have all the issues of traffic noise and difficulty parking and things like that can impact your enjoyment of the urban environment. So it's not for everyone, but it can be for some people.
Okay, over to me. So a lot of people, when they dream of Italy, their dream really is living in the countryside and being a contadino, a contadina. And who wouldn't love to do that? Look at its beautiful rolling hills. There's room to roam. You can have, a vineyard or an olive garden or an olive grove, I guess you call it. You can have your, vegetable garden, maybe a pool, and we'll talk about that and zoning and what you have to be careful about. And it looks and sounds heavenly in your dreams.
So there are potential downsides as well for countryside living. And one real issue, I think, is if you want to get away from it all, isolation can be a big thing in country life. So it's not too difficult at all to find a very nice country estate, and only to learn that it's 45 minutes on a windy gravel road from the nearest even provincial highway in Italy, making it very difficult to get there, to get things delivered to your property, and so on. So isolation's a challenge with some rural properties. It can also be difficult integrating into the community. If you're out in the farm estate, you're not, until you go into town, really going to bump into people. In Italy, if you're on a rural property, you really are very much living off the grid. You're likely not going to be plugged into any sort of municipal water supply, sewer system. There's no gas lines out to many rural properties. May be no garbage collection. So you really, when you're buying a property like that, have to understand that these things are going to be your responsibility to install, maintain, and look after. Internet is an interesting challenge in rural areas too. So,
even in Montepulciano.
Nowadays, people want to do things remotely and be plugged in while they're on holidays. So you get generally good cell coverage even in rural areas in Italy, but it's not always super reliable all the time. We have some friends with a rural property, and they use a satellite internet, which is quite good, but it's more expensive than other landlines or cell services. So that can be a consideration. With a rural property, there's definitely a much larger maintenance factor involved. So as nice as an olive grove may be, or a vineyard, those types of crops require a lot of maintenance. They're not just types of things that you leave unattended and expect them to thrive. So that is an issue with rural properties. You get all the benefits of your olive harvest every fall, which is wonderful, but it takes some work for sure.
And theft's an issue.
You can definitely be exposed to theft. We have a couple of friends with rural properties near us, and well, the one couple have had their place broken into about 4 times now over the last 5 or 6 years. There's just, they're quite remote, and there's nobody around to kind of observe when this happens. And the bad guys seem to know exactly when they leave to return to Canada, which is interesting.
And they wait for after the olive harvest.
Yeah.
So,
so I guess just to recap, it's not a lock it and leave it option. So if you're planning on being in your property just for maybe 3 or 4 months a year, you definitely need somebody that can look after it and help.
So more unexpected costs in the countryside. I think that's what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. So, you'll see if you're doing a search of real estate, lots of abandoned farm buildings in Italy. And, these are the supreme renovation challenges of all time. They're often very derelict, structurally unsound, sometimes literally piles of bricks. So you're almost buying the area plan and the ability to build a house because at one point there was a house in that place. So you might not even have an actual building intact. It can be quite challenging for what can be allowed for construction in some rural areas. As I mentioned at the start, the area below us is actually a historical and agricultural reserve.
Here, right here. So yeah,
So
I just
that
wanted
photo
to
on the
talk.
right is.
So this is a house that from our balcony, we look at this house. It's called Le Colombelle, and it's beautiful. So you can see it's newly built. I mean, it's got the structure. It's been on the market for 7 years. And so why? Because there's building restrictions. It's zoned as an agricultural property. So you might look at it and think, well, I'm going to put the kitchen here. I'm going to have the walkout, balcony or patio here, and then the pool.
But that's actually where you need to park your tractor.
Yeah, that's where you have to park the tractor. So, and the other thing that's interesting, so I got this off Great Estate, which is an international high-end luxury home real estate company. This originally was priced at 750,000 euros. It's gone down to 600. Oh, sorry. It's gone down to 650. I tend to lean in. Another real estate agency, Dream Tuscany, is listing it for 690. So even Graham's going to talk about the MLS listing in a second. But anyway, that's quite something. Okay.
Okay. Another interesting option you'll see if you're looking at rural properties is there's quite a few developments where builders have taken a borgo, a small town, or a farm complex, multi-building farm complex, or even a large estate home, and condominiumized those. So renovated them and split them into separate ownership. And it has the benefits of country living, but with sort of the condo style ownership model. So you can share in maintenance costs. There often are shared amenities like pools, parking. They're typically lower cost to purchase than if you were going out and buying your own farm building, for example. But I think they also have their challenges. You need to be wary of the cost of the common management fees for a condo development. And I think the other thing I'd be cautious about in Italy would be the quality of the management of the property, just to make sure that it was reliable. So again, some friends of ours are in not really a single condo building, but in an estate where there was common management of the state grounds. And that was extremely poorly managed over many years until the landowner resident group eventually was able to take it over. So I think it's just a caution with those types of ownership models.
Okay. So, given that we've looked at the cities and the pros and the cons of big cities, now we looked at the countryside, the pros and the cons in the countryside. Well, as a woman, I wanted to have the best of all worlds. So this came up, and this is my vision statement. This is what I was looking for. A hilltop Renaissance town close to big cities, not in the countryside, but surrounded by the countryside.
And that's what we ended up with.
That's what we ended up with. But also small towns, and when I say small towns, we're looking around 15,000, 20,000. They also have their pros and cons. And you see a list here, and so I don't want to read the list, but just around pros and services, we've got, if I talk about Montepulciano, we have a hospital, we have a gym, we have lots of residents, little boutiques, in terms of services, banking.
And it is a tourist town, so it has a lot of restaurants and wine shops. And things like that.
Wine, the Vino Nobile di Montepulciano is huge, attracts a lot of people. In terms of festivals and events, if you get into a small town, you can't even expect that you're going to get a weekly farmers market. In Montepulciano, we've got an international music festival, Il Cantiere Internazionale. We have the Bravio delle Botti, which are wine barrel race between the different neighborhoods every year. They push them up the hill. It's the equivalent of Il Palio in Siena.
There's a big Christmas festival in the main town square every year. And a wine festival.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
Lots going on. And there's a ready set community of Italian speakers, which is what I wanted. and the crime rate's lower. On the con side, in any historic center in el centro storico, it can be a quiet, dead area because the young people with their families aren't living in the centro storico. There can be also no outdoor space or parking, or your views might be of another brick building. And you can expect tourist noise. So more pros and cons to everything. It's a compromise. Okay, now our search experience. Here's what we narrowed it down. I have my vision statement. Boy, this is what we found.
So yeah, I'm just going to describe the process we went through. So first off, we started looking for properties online. So just poking around, seeing what was out there and trying to get an idea. And the first thing we really realized was there's no broad MLS system in Italy like there would be in Canada. You're starting to see now services which I would describe as agency aggregator type services like casa.it, immobiliari.it, Remax has a site for Italy. But what these sites do is they bring together local agent listings onto one platform. So you can see multiple agent listings across almost all of Italy now. But the trick is when you're actually shopping for properties, an agent will only show you the listings they have. So they don't act like agents here in Canada where you will get a real estate agent and they'll show you everything on the MLS listing service that you're interested in seeing. So you end up having to book with multiple agents in order to see a property. You know, in Montepulciano, if you wanted to see every property that was on the market in that town today, you'd probably be booking appointments with half a dozen agents. The other thing is when you're looking at these online sites and say you are searching Montepulciano, what you need to understand is they'll be showing you under the title of Montepulciano everything in the municipal district of Montepulciano, which extends about 20 kilometers around the core city of Montepulciano. As you dig deeper into the listing, you might realize that it's not in Montepulciano, but it'll kind of be listed under that city.
Even like Montepulciano Stazione is not in Montepulciano.
Yeah. Nearby town.
It's nearby town, or Acquaviva, or all those.
So through our search from Canada, when we decided we were going to go and do some actual shopping in Italy, we had identified about a dozen properties that we thought would be of interest in about, well, Silvana, I'll go through the towns, but about 8 different towns. And so we ended up booking appointments in advance with 8 or 10 real estate agents just to see those properties. One thing that was interesting too, when we did actually get to Italy and start looking at properties, was the owners often attended, probably in about half the cases. And it's an interesting cultural thing in Italy, but the owners often won't give the keys to the property to the realtor.
The lockbox doesn't exist.
No such thing as a lockbox. I think, you know, some of the owners just want to size you up and see if you're the type of person they'd be prepared to sell their property to. So when the owner's around, best to be on your best behavior, because if you actually do end up interested in a property, you want to be on good terms with the owner if they were there.
Unlisted property.
And then the last thing is, this we've learned more since we've been in Italy, but there's a lot of properties that are just never listed. A lot of private sales occur in Italy. You know, how you get plugged into that network short of living there for quite a while, we can't really advise you very well on that. But definitely, you know, there's just in our street alone in our town, we probably know of 2 or 3 in the last 2 years that have just sold privately. People
now,
just know.
And now that we're part of the town, we're part of that inner circle.
Yeah,
but before we weren't. So these are images. Have a look at these images. They were taken as earlier as late as last week. So they're recent images taken from realtor sites. This is what you'll find on their sites. And this is what's to show the property. So in the first image on the left, what do you see? You see a lot of clutter, a lot of mess. And in fact, that was very reflective of the very first property that we went to view. And I remember so excited when for our first house hunting trip, we only did one. The next morning, I was so excited to get up, and I just imagined, you know, the realtor was going to be there, put the key in the door, open the door, and there was going to be this beautiful living room with the sun flowing in, or, you know, sun-drenched living room, you know, a bowl of olives, not olives, lemons, or, you know, lemons or tomatoes on the table. Instead, what we found was that, yeah, the door, as soon as you opened the door, it was like it was an estate sale. And what do I mean by that? It was as if the corpse had been taken out of the chair and everything had been left intact. So, you know, the yellowed newspaper, the coffee cup that had the stain on it, the cobwebs, you know, the nonni, the pictures of the nonni or the nipoti, still on the wall. So.
And about a 1/4 inch of dust on everything. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's what you can expect. Things are changing, I've noticed, because I've been doing some just searches just to see how things have changed in 10 years. But this is a photo as of last week. The other thing you want to be aware of, and this was our case, is that you don't buy a kitchen. So you don't buy, the appliances are not come with it. Neither do kitchen cabinets. And you want to say
it's not unusual, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something you want to think about when you make an offer on a property. You may view it with a kitchen intact, and when you actually go to, you know, open the door when you've bought your property, the kitchen has vanished.
Yeah.
They would just think that's normal.
Yeah.
They're not considered
you just have to be
movable
clear.
Parts of the property.
Well, you just have to be clear. Okay, what else can you expect?
So our search, of course, was in the historic center. So that was kind of our experience. But in these historic centers, outdoor space of any kind is quite rare. So gardens are very unusual. Balconies can be quite unusual. So, you know, to find properties with those nice features is a good find. You're going to see lots of levels and no stairs.
No stairs, no elevators.
No elevators. Sorry,
We
no.
have
Yeah, you'll
stairs.
see. Yeah, you'll see no elevators. Right.
There will be stairs. You don't have to climb.
Well,
up.
you might see a few ladders. Though. Odd floor plans. So I mean, these are buildings designed 300 or 400 years ago. They didn't design buildings 300 or 400 years ago like we live nowadays. So. If you want the open floor plan with the kitchen and the island and all that stuff, as you would have in North America, just really doesn't exist in old towns in Italy. Oh, that's you will see lots of shared spaces. So,
Yeah.
you know, we have a shared staircase that serves our building and the one next to us. Access and parking can be real challenges in these old towns. So we're lucky we have not only a garage, but some decent street parking. And we are actually able to drive in the street that we live on.
With our permesso.
Yeah, it's a restricted traffic zone, which is nice because it's not a busy street.
But we can't park in our garage. We have a garage, but we can't park in it because the garage is below us and there's a building right there. So
Too small.
It's
yeah.
the street, you can call it a street, is so tiny and narrow, you can't actually make the turn to go into the garage. So we have a garage. In our garage is more a cantina. So we're collecting wine.
Yeah.
So it's not going to waste.
So I was just going to, well, yeah, so parking and access can be real issues. Yeah.
So going to where we narrowed down our search, these are the different towns we looked at, all the way from Chitona. You'll notice Montepulciano is not on there because we didn't narrow it down to Montepulciano. Montepulciano came after the fact. What did make our short list is Castiglione, what's it called? Castiglione del Fosco, scusate, no, Torre del Fosco. No, Castiglione del Fosco, sorry. Castiglione del Fosco made our short list and we fell in love with this property. Here's the property. Can you see it? It is absolutely beautiful. This is part of an annex of a church. It was a restaurant. Then they went there, they were going to sell it, we fell in love with it. I mean, 2 fireplaces, outdoor garden. We went back a second time. The owner and that second viewing was there, and I was saying, Signore, we love the property. We're going to go back to Canada and make an offer. And he said, well, Signore, that's fine, but there's a woman in town that's always been interested in this place, and she thinks she's got the money. And I thought, yeah, right. He just wants us to pay more. We got back to Canada, and in our inbox, actually, he said the house had been sold. To this day, we don't know if the house has been sold. Maybe he just didn't like us and he didn't want to give it to us, which is it's a fair possibility. But thank goodness we didn't get it, because it's not just a dying town, it was a dead town. They had a pharmacy that's open, 1 day a week. The forno where you can go buy your bread, it closes at noon. No restaurants, no activity in the piazza. So that, in hindsight, was the right place, the wrong town.
Even that one was, it was probably a 20-minute drive to the nearest center with good groceries and servicing.
Right? It was by Tavernelle. Okay, the other thing, beware.
So you're certainly seeing now lots of articles about the €1 house, and towns trying to sell properties inexpensively and hoping that they'll reinvigorate the town. I think certainly what we've seen of these types of places is there's reasons they've been abandoned. They're super isolated, way off the grid, difficult to access, no services at all often. And you're going to see very badly neglected buildings and infrastructure in these types of villages. So, there's a reason they're €1. The cost of renovating and the complexity of renovating a place in an area like that be very challenging, and probably really, really poor resale prospects. So it sounds great. There's lots of press interest in this sort of thing, but I certainly wouldn't advise people to look at properties like that in Italy.
So in a few minutes, we're ready to take questions. I think, Graham, we're just going to share some of our general learnings, and then we'll take questions at the end of this first part.
Yeah, so I think things we have kind of learned since we bought was definitely more time on the ground for 2 really important reasons. One is just understand how the area you're looking at fits with what you want for lifestyle. I think that's really key. The other thing is just the whole real estate shopping process, because you're dealing with multiple agents and so on. It just takes a lot more time to view property. So, so you need to make that time commitment. One thing that we've really learned to appreciate now that we're in Montepulciano is the access to transportation. So our town is 20 minutes to the A1 autostrada, and that kind of opens a whole world to you. We can quickly, within 40 minutes from our doorstep, be in Siena. We can be in Florence in an hour and a half driving, probably 30 minutes by train. We have to go into Chiusi, which is about a 20-minute drive, but still you have the option of taking high-speed train. We're in Rome, in the city, in 2 hours, to the airport in 2.5 hours. And just the, all the classic towns in Tuscany are probably within an hour to an hour and a half drive of where we're located. But a big part of that reason is because we're so close to the A1 and some of the major secondary highways. If we had bought just in Montepulciano, which was one of the places we looked in that area, that's another 20 minutes from the A1 autostrada from Montepulciano. So you're 40 minutes drive on windy rural roads to get to a major transportation hub. So it's an issue. Other thing, what we don't have in Montepulciano is direct train service. Mm-hmm. So we do have to have a car.
Mm-hmm. We rent a car.
We rent a car, but so if you are in a town though with train service, you might have the option of not even needing a car. Mm-hmm. And then finally, I've mentioned it already, but the whole issue of access to your property and parking, it's a big deal. So
Because these towns weren't built, these little hilltop towns weren't built for cars. So
No.
anyway, so I think we're good for questions, Laura.
Okay, I do have one question to start with from Mark Finley, and his question is for you, Graham. How good is your Italian language, and how important is that?
My Italian language speaking is really poor, very limited. I've certainly started to develop more of an ear for it over the time we've been there. But I haven't been really studious. I'm bad that way. I haven't, focused on learning Italian as I should. And now that I'm retired, it's something I want to spend more time on. It's not critical as a, I go out independently a lot to buy groceries, to go to vineyards, to, do daily stuff that I need to do. And I don't really need a lot of Italian to do that. I have enough transactional Italian, I get by. If you're dealing with a renovation project, you absolutely have to speak Italian.
Well, but there are English geometry.
Yeah, but they're hard to find. You can't count on that happening.
Okay.
If you have issues, it's really good to speak the language. Let's put it that way. I mean, it's.
I think with Graham at the beginning was shy. I think just being on the ground and seeing how things work, and even observing how things work, even in the grocery store, about taking the ticket. Once you see that, you watch, you become more comfortable. So Graham now, as he says, he goes off and he does his own thing, grocery shopping or whatever, and it's very successful. And I think that helps you build your confidence, right?
I would, to be honest, enjoy Italy even more if I had better language skills, I think.
Well, now you know that we have the Dante Italian Language School.
That's great.
A terrific opportunity for you to join us.
Yeah.
So a couple of more questions. Again, the second question from Mark, wondering, is it possible just to use a bicycle to get around? And I personally happen to know that this area is quite hilly, so I maybe an e-bike.
Oh, e-bikes are starting to become very popular.
You're starting to see them. It sure is possible. I find cycling in our area is quite intimidating because the roads have no shoulders. They're very windy and they're actually pretty heavy traffic. I find I have to psych myself up to get out on the highways there. There are some areas that we've loaded the bikes in the car that we go to more remote that are fine.
But a motorcycle is a possibility.
Oh, motorcycles.
Yeah,
sure.
We've talked about getting motorcycles.
Or
Then
scooter.
Our scooter, we'd be able to park it in our garage.
Yeah.
We have bikes there.
We can pretty much get everything, to live on in our town.
No, we've got two good grocery stores, Aerospin and Conad.
Yeah.
Those are good. Those are good sized stores, and then little specialty stores as well, and pastry shops. So you don't really need to leave Montepulciano.
Yeah.
You've got everything you need there, really.
But if you want to just go touring, biking is great.
Sure.
Yeah.
Another question from Shannon is, did you obtain an elective residency visa? And if so, any wisdom gained from the process?
So you don't need any residency or citizenship to buy in Italy.
Right.
So that becomes more an issue if you want to spend an extended period of time there.
We have citizenship.
We both do have citizenship. If you want to spend more than 90 days continuous, you need to register with the local police. And those rules have even changed a bit recently, I know. But as citizens, we could stay any length of time we wanted.
And that came in handy because we didn't typically we'll go in March and then we'll stay till end of May. Last year, of course, we didn't do that, but we did go over in the fall. And because we are Italian citizens and we didn't have any problems getting into the country, we quarantined there and quarantined back,
Right.
but nobody batted an eye that we were traveling because of the citizenship.
Another question from Deanne is, how important is the expat community? I'm assuming there is some expat community in and around your surrounding area. And I'll just tie a question on to that. Did you find once you settled in that you had an easy time integrating in with your neighbors and the people in your community?
So I would say no to that, Laura. I think integration takes time. Even here, moving from Calgary to Victoria, we're new to the community. COVID doesn't help. I think what I learned that I would share as what you could do that helped me is a couple of things. So figure out a coffee shop that you like, that you get a good feeling for, and go there every day. And that familiarity doesn't breed contempt. It will breed, curiosity, friendliness. People don't know who you are. They don't know what your intentions are. So have some things that you do on a regular basis and be consistent with them. I went to the gym. There's a gym there called the Top Gym. So people knew me through that. That helped. So you've got my gym peeps or whatever. And then I started volunteering. So I'm volunteering at an old folks home and at the L'Istituto Antoniano, which is a kind of a foster care home. But again, so all these different points of contact. And, once I befriended, there's two older gentlemen on our street, Virio and Umberto. Well, they became my buddies, and they weren't married. They had lots of time. I went over, and I was 56 when I went over there for 3-4 months on my own. Graham was still working. And they would introduce me to people, and they liked having somebody younger because they were in their 70s to introduce. And Virio he was a calzolaio, so he was a cobbler in town. So I would just hang out in his shop, and lots of older men would come in and be very happy to talk to somebody. You talk to a younger person, they're very curious. So that just slowly, it takes time. You have to have that intention of, nobody's going to come out and knock on your door and say benvenuti. Nobody's going to do that.
And
the
there's certainly lots of English-speaking people in Montepulciano that own properties, Canadians, Americans.
Yeah.
And actually, Silvana's met a number of those through the gym. The gym is actually a pretty good meeting place.
It's been really nice. And through the gym, we've just met some really good people, an American couple. I met Karen. She's from California, and she's married to Fabrizio, an Italian. So, we now have a bigger community there than we do here because we're new here and we have COVID here. So
maybe I'll just ask 2 more questions and then we'll go on to the second part of your presentation. A question from Eloise was, did you ever consider Lucca? That was her first question. And the second one, just to follow up to the comments around registration when you're there past 90 days, if you register with the police, is there a special visa you would need?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well,
I'm not sure.
We don't know that.
Yeah.
We don't know that.
If you're not a citizen, I wouldn't be surprised if you do, but.
Okay, well, we'll move on from that question.
Lucca, I want to answer that.
Oh yes, Lucca, about Lucca.
That was actually going to be part of our wrap-up as to would we do it again.
Okay.
Lucca's a great town. Lucca's really interesting.
I'd say one thing we would potentially consider if we were to do it again would be some of these mid-sized cities. And Lucca is lovely. It's a beautiful city.
And to Mark's point, you can bike there as much as you want.
Yeah, it's flat there.
So you can bike around the walls of the city.
Yeah, Lucca is delightful. Arezzo is one that I think a lot of people, because it's not a big tourist city, but it's a really nice city for services.
Oh, it's beautiful. And, they have a monthly antique market where we bought things for our apartment there.
Perugia is a neat city.
Perugia is very cool.
Yeah. So those sort of mid-size Italian cities are a pretty good option, actually. And, you know, and to the point about transportation, they're all on major transportation lines, and yeah, they're not bad.
Yeah.
But another one is Montova.
Oh, Montova is
We've talked about
beautiful.
Montova.
That's in the north.
And everybody goes to,
Verona?
no, what's the one next to Montova?
Padua? No.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Verona, Padua,
Verona.
Padua.
I said Verona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Verona's nice though too.
Verona's nice too, but it's
Yeah.
super touristy.
Yeah.
Montova is not as touristy, but it's really cool city. Anyway.
We're having so many questions come in, and perhaps we can save some of those to the end of our presentation. People are very curious about the cost of living. Would you live there full time? How are the hospitals? Many questions.
Oh, wait.
So,
Okay, well, let's answer those at the end. They're great questions.
okay, wonderful. So we'll look forward to your next part too.
So this is part 2. Okay, so we found the place. We found the place. It was in Montepulciano. That's another story. How we got to Montepulciano. But okay, here we go. Sorry. So these are the people you're going to need. These are your inner circle here. You're going to need your real estate agent, l'agente immobiliare. As Graham mentioned, I think Graham mentioned, the realtor represents both the buyer and the seller. So he represents neither the buyer or the seller, because he's representing really himself, because he's interested in the deal.
Yeah, be aware of that. And the guy with the ruler is the geometra. When we bought our property, 300-year-old building, it was abandoned basically. We brought in the geometer, who's a bit of a cross between an engineer and a general contractor in Italy. He had a full look at all the structure of the building to make sure it was sound, the mechanical systems. They can help you ensure that the building is compliant with the local bylaws and zoning rules. They can be a great resource too in giving you an idea of what the art of the possible is with renovations. And in any sort of historic area, the rules are super restrictive. So you may walk into your future dream house and think you'll just punch a window through the wall and open up the view. Well, it doesn't work that way in a historical center in Italy. So you need to understand, before you buy, what might be possible for renovations. And a geometer can answer a lot of those questions. And then the other person you'll deal with is legal resources. So there's 2 legal professions you will deal with in Italy. One is the avvocato, who would handle the purchase offer agreements, the purchase contracts. The agent, the real estate agent, can also do that, but I think there's good reasons to use avvocato. And the other is the notaio. So the notaio is the lawyer that looks after all of the conveyancing of the property. So they are the ones that deal with the title transfer. They make sure that the owners do have proper title that are selling. They make sure that there's no liens on the property. And they make sure the building is in compliance with the local zoning rules.
And they actually work for the government.
Yeah, they're essentially appointed by the government. Yeah. So those are those 2 players.
And then you're going to need a group of cheerleaders cheering you on, like Vinny and his boys here, because you're going to have lots of highs and lows, and you're going to wonder what the heck you're doing, and they'll be there to support you. Okay.
So this is kind of the process. We did our due diligence. So that was the whole phase of, checking out the community and make sure it fit with our lifestyle wishes. The geometry was a very big part of our due diligence process. Very valuable part. Then we got into negotiations.
And we don't be afraid to negotiate.
Yeah. I think Italians culturally expect a negotiation to happen. And they're almost insulted if you don't, I would say. You will encounter in Italy a lot of opportunistic listings or not serious sellers. So you see properties where the price is just, you know, almost no bearing on reality. And
you'll see different prices, like the one with Le Colombelle, right? Green Tuscany is listing it for 690,000 euro. Great Estate has it on its site for 650,000. So same property, different prices.
Yeah. Relationships matter in a real estate transaction in Italy. So as I mentioned, you know, you don't want to insult the seller, and you want to be on good terms, but you can drive a hard bargain that I don't think will insult people. I would say generally Italy is not a hot real estate market. So most of Italy prices, if anything, have been going down over the last few years. So you don't have to feel in a big rush to buy a property. In some centers, it will be though. So Milan, Lago di Como, places like that can be quite competitive markets. And when you're settling on a price you're prepared to pay, the other big thing you need to keep in mind is you're going to pay a bunch of tax on the transaction, and we'll get to that.
Okay.
And you'll, if you have any renovations involved, you should factor that into your thinking as well, because the cost of buying is one of your costs, but it's not the only one for sure. And then finally, closing the deal, as I've mentioned, you're going to deal with the notaio on that. This can be a very lengthy process. So easily 2 to 3 months to transfer a property in Italy. And that's as long as you're not doing it over the summer. If you're not able to attend in person, you're going to need a power of attorney appointed. So you need somebody on the ground in Italy that you trust to represent you. As a lawyer, part of the transaction that really made me uneasy was they don't operate trust accounts in Italy through the law firms. So what the notaio did was told us the documents were fine, the title transfer was ready to be completed, and then they basically give you wire instructions to send all your money directly to the seller. So very different sort of change of hands of money from what you'd experience here in North America.
So there was a leap of faith.
Yeah, that was a major leap of faith.
That's where we relied on our cheerleading squad.
And the final thing is, any piece of paper you touch in connection with this transaction, keep the original copies. They will be invaluable at some point in the future, I'm sure.
Do you want to talk about the compromise? No, okay. Okay, so what does actually the costs look like to buy something? Here are the taxes and the fees. Okay, do you want to? So
what you want to?
Well, I just think I just wanted to point out, look at who's paying.
Yeah.
Look at it. It's always the buyer.
The buyer's paying. So we could do a whole hour-long presentation on taxes and fees on real estate transactions in Italy. So this was to try and just give you a very quick recap. The landscape is changing all the time, but typically you'll pay a registration tax. In our case, it was 7% because we were foreign buyers. But just to give you a flavor of this, if you buy from a company versus an individual, the tax is even higher. I have no idea why that is, but that's the case. On new homes, you can pay value-added tax, which is very significant. There's a land registry tax, and the rate that a foreigner pays is 1%. Local Italians pay a lower rate. You pay your legal fees, of course. And the one difference from here too is the buyer pays the realtor fees, but the seller also pays the same fee.
Yeah. So.
And we've put down 3%. That's what we paid, but it can be higher or lower than that. So, so fees can really add up on the sale of a property.
That's good. So now we've bought the place. Now we're going to renovate it. So here we go. These are our geometry. We have Cosimo in the middle and Alfonso, their a brother team. They're the Coviello brothers. And they're just great guys. We were very lucky. We're friends with them now over the 10 years. They really we have a wonderful relationship, and they've earned our trust, so much so that we've given them delega. And that means that they can go, Cosimo will send me an email as he did last week saying, Silvana, the EMU, your property taxes due. And I say, okay, Cosimo, he tells me the amount, shows me the bill. And I say, and I write it down, send him an email saying, yes, please go and pay it. He takes that note that I've given him permission into the bank. So they're very much part of our lives. And we're very lucky that we came across, that we found such great, honest, good people.
Yeah. So our geometer really acted as the general contractors for this renovation. This shows you the property in the condition when we bought it. So it was, none of the mechanical systems worked.
No kitchen.
And it was a very chopped up floor plan, kind of walls and doors in funny places. So the geometra were our general contractors. They brought in sub-trades to do all the work. They dealt with all the permitting and negotiations with City Hall on what we could and could not do. This is the view out to the Val d'Orcia. We didn't need to renovate that, but you can see on the left-hand side, there's a little bookcase there. So the story with that is that actually was the location of a window.
Yeah.
You could tell from the outside brickwork there'd been a window there.
So you can see how dark this is now our, well, we opened it up. It's quite dark, and because there was the outline of a former window there, our argument or our case was that we're restoring it to its authentic historical condition. And that allowed us to get now a window there. And you'll see it at the end, how much light that brings in. Okay, but here's the renovations.
Yeah, here's the start. We took it down to the studs, but the studs are rocks and rubble. So the geometer, before we started the renovation work, had prepared a estimate of works, extremely detailed, covered everything right through the final finishing. The final cost of the project was actually right on the mark with the pre-estimate. So that was fantastic. You know, overall, the experience was very good. We can't write a funny book about all the disasters that happened during our renovation. It was a good experience. It was a slow process. This took just over a year. Now, we weren't in a hurry because we were still working at the time, and you know, weren't too fussed about the slow pace of progress. But you know, there's lots of reasons why the work was slow. You know, there's the summer holiday period. There's, in our town, restricted access periods where no work could be done on the outside of the building.
Well, because, and then there, remember this festival, the competition, I Bravio delle Botti? Well, that's closed for 2 weeks.
Yeah, you can't have scaffolding up on your building.
Yeah.
But you know, you may need to push your contractors too. The squeaky wheel kind of gets greased, and putting pressure on to get work done is pretty important part of the process. So it was very good for us to be on site at two key stages. So one stage, and that's why we had the photos, was we arrived just as the demolition was being completed. So we caught a number of issues and set things up for the final finishing work at that point in time. And it would have, ideally, we would have been there on a few more occasions, but we couldn't do it.
So this is an image of our balcony, because the balcony was actually quite narrow. And I remember saying to Cosimo, this balcony is so small, I can't even put my table out there. And he said, Signora, tutto è possibile, basta avere I soldi. So with soldi, you can do anything. And so now I have a larger, deeper terrace because we had the soldi for it. So this is where we've ended up. So you can see that window that wasn't there before, right here, is now there. It's a clean, we went with a very clean slate. There was a false ceiling, and we had, the beams are now exposed. So this is where we started with, and then we did some decorating. Here's our kitchen that we've moved from the back to the front. There was no kitchen there. So it's very modern. It's 1,000 square feet. We've got 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. This is our living room. So the light's a little bit weird, but it gives you an idea of our living space. We have the dining room right behind the couch, which I think there might be a picture of it. That's a view looking into the 2 bedrooms. That's one of the bedrooms. That's our kitchen table looking outside, or our dining table. We don't have a table in the kitchen, but you can see the view and why we just love our place. And there we are. So would we do it again? Maybe we talked about looking at larger cities instead of going for a small town. Lucca, Arezzo, Siena. Even Siena is a very nice, but Siena's not, Siena's pretty big.
But having said that, I think we buy in Montepulciano.
We love Montepulciano.
It's a great little town, yeah.
Montepulciano now for us is like a second home, so we're biased. We would do things differently. We take our time, negotiate harder, and really understand what we were getting ourselves into. So,
yeah.
But yes, we would do it again. And I'd love to do it now because I just feel so much more confident. Like I remember in those meetings with the geometra, and I didn't have the technical knowledge or even a lot of knowledge about parts of our home or whatever. And Cosimo said, Signora, do you want a ripostiglio? I said, I think so. It sounds nice. What's a ripostiglio? So I love my ripostiglio. A ripostiglio is a utility room where now I have my washer and dryer and I have my shelves as storage. So, but there was a lot of drawing and drawing going on. So I'd love to do it now.
So that's
Thank you,
the
Laura.
end.
That's the end.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll continue with a few more questions. You did mention that the nicest thing to have happened along your process is the fact that your budget that you set out and your expenses actually aligned. That's a dream for any renovation, either in Canada or certainly in Italia.
Mm-hmm.
About the hospital, someone asked a question earlier, is it a private or is it a public hospital? And our services, do you pay an extra insurance for healthcare when you go to Italy as people staying there for a few months, or?
Well, we buy Canadian travel insurance coverage.
And they have both private and public, and we've used both. So Notola is a very big hospital, 10 minutes from Montepulciano. I've gone there when I've been sick on my own. They never refuse to see you, especially if you had, like I had bronchitis. I think the bill just to see me was 40 euros and that's it. We've also had, when we've had friends come and visit us, we've done the private clinics. They're more expensive, but you get in right away. So you have options for both. And the healthcare system in Italy is, I would feel very comfortable. You don't want to get sick in Italy, but being treated by Italian doctors, top notch.
Yeah, very modern.
Very modern, really very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And have you spent a lot of time now that you're settled in? I believe you've been going through your experience now for 10 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And really we've used it really, Laura, only on a regular basis, I say for the last 4 years.
Okay. And during that time, are you finding that you're, spending a lot of time outside of Montepulciano and visiting a lot of other places?
So we're starting to see more of Italy, but we're also trying, consciously to visit other parts of Europe. So, for example, last year when we left Italy, we stopped in England for a couple of weeks on the way home. We've skied in Austria a couple of times when we've been in Italy.
In Cervinia.
In Cervinia, and also in, Austria and Cervinia. We were going to be in Berlin this fall, but that didn't work out. So, we want to use it, as I said earlier, as a base to explore other parts of Europe. And it's certainly much easier once you're there.
Would you consider to live there year round?
I would feel very comfortable living there. It's, you know, it's a different experience. It's once you know the system. I remember being at the beginning, Laura, and you know, it's so funny to get a key cut. We spent, I don't know, an hour on the trying to find where to cut a key. It was right in the centro storico I could have gone to. So once you know the system, everything becomes easier, and it's now familiar, and it's nice when we drive. We know we're going to pick up the milk and get some coffee, and now it's
know
nice.
our way around.
Now it's very nice. We know our way around it. To live there full time, yeah, I think we would miss our family here.
Well, I'm a bit of the practical head here, so that's the dream. The biggest reality hit would be the tax implications of doing that, because if you actually were to up residence in Canada and then move to Italy, there's a lot of tax implications to doing that sort of thing. So I don't think we would do it, in fact, for that, unfortunately, for that reason. But you can do it, like, if you do, you can do it for like a year and maybe not trigger the tax implications. But if you're actually permanently moving to Italy, you definitely should get some tax advice on doing that.
When you were able to go through your purchase, given that you have Italian citizenship, was this an opportunistic, or did this improve your opportunity in terms of the timeline that it would have taken if you didn't have your citizenship?
No, that had no impact. Anybody can buy, and anybody can buy, citizen or no citizen. Okay,
wonderful. And then for Maria, another question. She's just wondering if you were to compare the cost of living between, let's assume Vancouver or anywhere really in Canada, and your cost of living in Italy, do you find it quite different?
If it requires fuel, it's really expensive.
Yeah. But day to day, but the groceries are cheaper. You can eat very well, inexpensively.
Cheaper and very high quality.
And very high quality. The quality of food is outstanding.
Yeah.
So I think overall, apart from utilities, it's less expensive.
Car gas.
Fuel. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, self-service is way cheaper. Electricity actually is not that bad. You know, most things are less expensive, I would say.
Even our property tax, and all our taxes are paid as non-resident. So we're getting charged a little bit more because we're non-residents. But our property taxes, they're 130 per person twice a year. So 260 euros once a year per person.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, the property taxes are
well, that's why Italians
all.
also sit on their properties.
Yeah.
Yes, I imagine. And the vino, I mean, just goes without saying. It's just so unbelievably wonderful.
We're absolutely surrounded by vineyards where we are, and olive groves. And sheep that produce pecorino cheese.
Pecorino. Well, I had the wonderful experience of being to your city twice in the past. And I do recall one in particular beautiful meal we had in the Centro Historico, where we sat and had pecorino with honey and walnuts and drank an amazing bottle of wine, along with polenta and gorgonzola and prosciutto, and it just went on and on. It's it is absolutely beautiful, and I'm sure that it just conjures up so many wonderful memories for many of our guests tonight, as well as all of us who had the opportunity to visit many places in Italy, including Montepulciano. I'm not sure if there's any other questions or if you have any other comments, Silvana and Graham, that you'd like to add.
No, this has been fun.
Yeah, it's just nice to share the experience.
It's nice. It's nice. And thank you for letting us do it.
It's been such a pleasure, and really, I'm sure, as you mentioned, I like the little cautionary note about the €1 towns, because you read these ads in magazines or hear about them, through different programs, and it just does make people so excited to be able to pursue different options. And hopefully some people do want to go and do those kinds of things, because those towns do need support, and sometimes foreigners do bring in a whole new lively culture to places like that. Also, I know many years ago that there was an incentive through the Italian government for foreign people to come and invest in Italy, and they were providing, I think it was some sort of subsidy, but I think that was more based around agriturismo, that if you bought the building and then you developed it, you had it for tourism, that the Italian government really encouraged that. I'm not sure if you're aware if that still continues, or.
They actually, just now have introduced a new program to help support renovation of properties, and foreigners can take advantage of it. It's actually a pretty good time to buy if you're wanting to renovate. So the government just introduced that. I think it just started this month.
So to the audience, are some of you now going to consider this? Well, thank you so much, Silvana and Graham, for joining us and taking us on this wonderful journey, conjuring up these beautiful images. Certainly your property is just stunning, and I'm sure worth all the hard work and effort you've put into it. Thank you to all the audience for joining us tonight and your support of our programming. I just wanted to mention that our next program will be on February 25th, again on Zoom and in English. And this program will feature an Italian sociologist, Francesco Mores, and he discusses from the Renaissance to the Italian factor. So again, thank you all for joining us. And Silvana and Graham, when you can get there, I'm sure you can't wait. We're so excited for you to have the opportunity. And thanks again for sharing.
Thank you.
We'll toast you when we're there next time.
Oh, please do. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Ariana. Notte.
Tantissime
Bye,
grazie.
Silvana, bye bye, Graham.
Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao,
Arrivederci.
ciao, ciao.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
Molto bene.
Come si fa? Oh, I have to stop screen sharing.
Some
This is like.
of us are still on here, for sure.